Hello, everyone, and love to welcome you to our Wednesday webinar. And I am Melissa Washington. I am the CEO and founder of Women Veterans Alliance. And our main mission is to connect women veterans with each other and resources. And we do that through our online and in-person networking and events. And this is one of our ways that we connect women veterans, not only to each other, but to resources through our Wednesday webinar programs that we have. If you haven't connected with us, please do so. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, and I need to add the new threads on there as well. So we're also on threads too. Please visit our website if you're looking to, if you need some help with a business idea or your entrepreneurship, career, we do provide coaching. We also have the only online directory for women veteran-owned businesses. You could take a look at our allies directory, which are other organizations that predominantly serve women veterans. We also have a listing of women veteran memorials and monuments. Also, too, if you're interested in becoming a member, there's more information on our website for that. Also, too, upcoming September 8th through the 10th is our signature event, the Unconference. If you haven't got your tickets, we do have some still available. Visit womenveteransunconference.com. This will be our 7th one. It'll be at the Tropicana Resort in Las Vegas. And also, too, if you're looking for events throughout the U.S., feel free to visit veteran.events to find different events. If you have an event, send it to us. We can get it on our online calendar. Also, too, we have a directory of speakers as well as women veteran conferences listed on veteran.events there. All right. So we do, and I missed adding the slide. We do have 2 more webinars coming up for this month. If you go to womenveteransalliance.com/webinars, you can see our upcoming 2 webinars. Next week is going to talk about caregivers. So if that's something you're interested, go visit womenveteransalliance.com/webinars, and you can find out our next 2 webinars for the month of July. So I know Christina's got a lot to share with us, but I am going to read her bio and so you know a little bit more about who is going to be sharing all this great information about getting a job in the federal government. She has over 10 years HR experience and an MBA with Human Resource Management and Project Management certification. She is a federally certified mediator and certified labor relations negotiator. Chris is certified Franklin Covey Instructor and enjoys building and leading trainings. She's an 8-year Army vet and served during Operation Inherent Resolve. She has worked for Department of Defense, Department of Interior, and Department of Veterans Affairs. Chris is passionate about the military community, caring for veterans and their families, creating opportunities for growth and understanding. Chris is a military spouse to her wife, and together they have 4 kids, 2 dogs, and 1 cat. Chris loves her family, being outside, and the sunshine. I'd love to introduce you all to Chris. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna get your stuff up here so you can take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. Such an honor to be here today. Thanks everyone for joining. You know, I've given this class 100 times, and each time I do it a little differently just to keep myself on my toes, and of course to also, you know, hear from the audience on what it is today that you all are looking to do. So thank you for that beautiful introduction. I will go ahead and jump right into today's webinar. Thanks again, Melissa, for having me. It's such a privilege, such an honor to be here today. You know, I can't say it enough. As an Army veteran, as a military spouse, I'm here today because others within our community supported me. You know, first leaders in the military, of course, you know, that the first sergeant commander, fellow peers, my own military spouse, and then in my federal career, individuals looked out for me. And that is why I take this so passionately to help other veterans and other military spouses attain those career dreams that they also look for as they transition from the military, either as a veteran or as a spouse, into the private sector, specifically into the federal government. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently stationed at the Oakland Regional Office as HR Section Chief, And like Melissa said, I'm an Army veteran and currently Army military spouse as well. And yes, we have a full squad, 4 kids, 2 dogs, and a cat. So super, super busy life all the time. I joke that when I log off of my VA job, I log into my mom hat, my mom job, and attain to all of that, and all that includes. So it's busy and always very, very rewarding. Next slide, please. So I would like to pause here for a moment and ask everyone to participate, because today, yes, I love being here, but today is about you. And just take a moment and quickly grab your phone, grab your notes section, or if possible, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, grab a pencil. And I would like you to write down the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask you this question. If you were stuck on an island because a plane went down or a ship or whatever it was, for whatever reason, picture yourself stuck on an island and there was only one rescue ship. What reason would you give that conductor of that boat or that ship to have a seat on that one rescue ship? What reason would you give them? So I'll pause here for a moment, let you really think about that. Whatever comes to mind first, write that down. And think about a place you can put that in your house today. I like to say the bathroom mirror, or maybe it's the steering wheel, center console of your car, of where you can see it every day as a reminder of why you deserve to be on that one rescue ship. And bear with me, this does have a purpose, I promise you that. So as you write that down, I want to invite you to think about what your purpose is. Next slide, please. So when you think about why you deserve a seat on that one rescue ship, what is your reason? What is your purpose for having that seat? And take just a few moments and write that down as well. Your purpose for your life can have a huge impact on your career. My current supervisor once said to me, Chris, how serious you take your personal life is how serious you will take your career. Your purpose and your reason will fuel you on your good days, on your bad days, every day. Your purpose for your life, your purpose for everything that you do, your reason for having a seat on that ship is what fuels you, is what sets that foundation for your career choices, and everything you live for, whatever that is. Why does that matter? Why is Chris starting a training on how to gain federal employment with this? Next slide, please. This picture is actually returning from a deployment to Iraq in 2017. And it of course, it's for me, I personally am attached to this when I see it. And I know that you all, whether it's a military spouse and you've seen your spouse deplaning, or you yourself have been on that plane, whether leaving or coming back, have some sort of relationship to a picture like this, right? Let me just give you some numbers as to why your purpose matters so much and why it's important for you to know it. In 2022, the US deployed over 100,176 servicemen and women. It's a lot of people. The average service member and military family goes through more life-changing events in 1 year than the regular civilian would go through in a lifetime. Really think about that for a moment. How many of you have, in 1 year, gotten married, deployed, went to training, had a baby? A lot of people outside of the military community, they experience those types of life-changing events, life-altering events throughout their lifetime, not condensed into 1, 2, maybe even 5 years, as is very common to do in the military. We've all seen it, maybe even been part of it. Currently in Northern California, I'm going to provide the data for Northern California because that's where I'm located. There are over 6,000 homeless veterans. In the state of California, there were 14,000 homeless veterans. I respect and I understand that some people choose to be homeless by choice, specifically in the veteran community. And of course, that is within their choice. But I asked myself, what if they had a purpose? What if they knew what it was that they are living for? Could that open up more opportunities for them? Could it? Not right or wrong, but just could it? Why do we have homeless veterans? Why do we have still 16 veteran suicides per day just in the state of California? Why do we have that? And why are they ranging of the age between 18 and 34 when most individuals are at the prime, the start of their life, the start of their career? What if they had a purpose? What if they knew it? Just talking about this just for a moment. Next slide, please. Being in service is something that you chose to do. As far as I know, the United States hasn't forced anyone to join recently, right? So you are the one that raised your right hand and chose to serve your country. The military is great. They are great for molding people into what they need. Nothing wrong with that, of course. They have a mission. We support that mission when we are in that role as a service member. And when we leave that career choice, how do we go back to what it is that we want for ourselves? What is that? Is it a career in HR? Is it to be a doctor? What dreams did we put aside so we could serve within the military branch? Knowing your purpose, your intention for life, and most importantly, what it is that you want will give you the energy for any day, any situation. Think about that for a moment for those of you who have been in the military. And when those situations come about and you're just like, why am I here? Remind me why I chose to serve the military. Why did I choose to join? And they're so overwhelming, right? If you could just for a moment go back then to the younger version of you, right? And be like, remember, Chris, this is your purpose. This is why you're here. This is why you chose to join the Army. Today's situation is temporary. We're going to live for the bigger picture of what it is that I'm living for, right? What it is that my passion is for. And that is how I want you to set your foundation, of course, for this webinar, for this training, but also for any career choices that you make as you transition from the military or as you look for employment in the government. Knowing what it is you want, knowing what it is of your purpose for your life is what will fuel you through any situation, any day. Doesn't matter how hard it is. Next slide, please. So of course, I may be a little biased to the VA. I've held this role now for 4 years, and it is, when I left Department of Interior, a fellow coworker told me, they were like, hey, if you want a challenge, go work for VA. I've never forgotten that she said that to me. And I accepted a job with the VA a couple of weeks after she told me that. And it has definitely been the most challenging and most rewarding position I have ever had, for sure. And why is that? Why do I take it so passionately? Our mission is to serve and take care of the veteran and their family members, right? And that is part of what my purpose is and what fuels me every day. And I know that, sometimes the VA gets a bad rap, and I get that. And every single day, as working for the VA, looking for reasons, how do we reach more veterans? How do we reach more military spouses? How do we take it one step further and providing care and support to our military community? And that is exactly what the VA is here for and exactly what our mission entails. Next slide, please. So first, I want to pause here for a moment because I have to give a little bit of a blurb about the VA. I don't know if y'all have heard about the PACT Act. I will make sure these links get sent out to y'all later. But the PACT Act is an act, a new law that expands VA healthcare and benefits for veterans who have been exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic substances. Of course, what does that mean for us as an agency? That means we are hiring. Last FY, we hired over 7,000 employees, which was the most we hired ever. And this year, we are looking to hire over 9,000 positions. I know I could speak for my own office. We have hired 62 new hires in the past 6 months. In fact, we hired the first 40 in less than 60 days. And of course, we have a lot more positions to fill. We have quite a few regional offices spread across the nation, and it is an amazing time to get into the government. Of course, we also have a program that if you are still serving on active duty called WARTAC, and I invite you to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can share more with you what the possibilities are with receiving on-the-job training and then having the opportunity for gainful employment after you complete that training. Next slide, please. A little bit of a foot stomp here. The VBA, of course, is actively hiring for all 60 locations across the nation, some of which are completely virtual and others have a maximum telework opportunities. What does that mean? Right now, most offices are operating where you report to the office 1 day a week or 2 days of pay period. Of course, like with anything with the government, I'm sure the military taught us all this, things are always subject to change. However, right now there are opportunities for virtual or of course a lot of telework. And if you are a veteran, military spouse, or qualify for Schedule A, which was an individual with disabilities, you can email directly the point of contact listed on the USA Jobs announcement down at the bottom of the page and ask them to be considered for a non-competitive hire. I will say that my office, we are doing a lot of non-competitive hires. Why? It supports veterans, supports military spouses, supports those with Schedule A qualifications, and it's a much faster process than waiting for USA Jobs. Just a little bit of a foot stomp for those of you who may be interested in a quick hire opportunity with the VA, especially in the fact that we are hiring mass amounts across the nation right now. All right, next slide, please. So now let's get into it. What is USA Jobs? So USA Jobs is the main website, not the only, but it is the main website that not just the VA, but all agencies use to post their job announcements. Job announcements will vary from anywhere to having a cap on how many applicants can apply to being as long as 3 months, 90 days of being announced on USA Jobs. We're going to get into how to create a profile, how to create a resume, and how to set up a saved search that you can get notified with certain jobs fall into your criteria that you may want to apply for. Next slide, please. So I'd like to just remind everyone that, for those of you who are going to be actively looking for a position on USA Jobs, whether you're looking for a non-competitive, a direct hiring as military or as a military spouse, it's great just to start with the simple steps. Thinking of it like a Facebook or MySpace account, create your profile first. Take your time. If it's in the morning, get yourself a nice cup of coffee. If it's at night after 5 o'clock, pour yourself a glass of wine and just literally take your time. Take your time and fill out all the information on your profile. It's, in my mind, it's not really worth looking for jobs unless I've completed the profile, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Next slide, please. So once you go into the profile section, of course, you will, the first tab on the profile is your home section. In the home section, you'll be able to view all of the applications that you have applied for. Also, you'll be able to see which ones you've been in progress, referred, not selected, selected, or canceled. You will also be able to set up your saved job. So if you saw a job that you want to apply for, you can go back and apply for it at a later date. You can save that job. And then, of course, you can also set up a saved search. A saved search, I like to, of course, emphasize that if you are actively looking for employment right now, you'll want to create a saved search. You can set up your specific job series that you're looking for, like IT, HR, legal, a healthcare provider, and then you can set up the specific filters that you want. So virtual versus non-virtual, how far you're willing to travel, what duty locations you're interested in. And you can set up those saved searches to notify you daily, weekly, or monthly. And those go directly to your text or to your phone or to your email. Next slide, please. I pause it here for just a moment. Clear my throat, thank you. All right, so within your profile tab, there are 11 tabs, as you'll see here on the screen. So your contact information, let me be a little bit of a mom mode for a second. So, I have to stop and chuckle when we get an application from a young service member, or sometimes a senior service member, and I see hotbikinibody@gmail.com as their contact email. Of course, I laugh, my team laughs, and then I put them in the discard pile. I just want to emphasize that professionalism is key. Within the military, of course, we like to joke around and all that, and maybe it doesn't really matter what your email address is, but when you transition over to private or federal, you'll want to really make sure that your email is set up professionally. I like to say that just you keep it simple, christina.engel@gmail.com. And then of course your voicemail is set up and also professional. Make sure that you can even use the voicemail that comes with your phone, but make sure that you leave that contact information and that you check your voicemail, because oftentimes we'll call to schedule an interview or to get a reference check, and the voicemail will be full, so we're unable to make contact with that individual and we're not able to text. So make sure that your email is professional, and of course your voicemail is professional as well. When you are creating your profile and going through each of those tabs, you'll want to annotate your citizenship. You'll also want to make sure that you claim every single hiring path possible: military spouse, recent grad, veteran, Schedule A. If more than one apply to you, select all that apply. Why is that important? You'll be able to end up on more certificates, which is a list of qualified applicants that apply for that position. Those get sent to the hiring manager and HR. Your name could show up on military spouse, veteran, Schedule A, whatever applies to you, which means that you have a higher opportunity to be selected because your name is on more than one cert. Federal experience. If you have federal experience, you'll want to make sure that when you put in that information in your profile, you also upload the supporting SF50 and documentation matches those dates. So if you were HR specialist and you put that in your profile from June 2016 to June 2019, you'll want to make sure the dates match what is on your SF50 document that you've uploaded to support that work experience. Same thing goes for military experience. If you've served in the military, you'll want to make sure that your service dates are accurate and they match what's on your current DD-214. A little bit of a foot stomp here. In the process of hiring right now, we are hiring a lot of individuals who are in the process of transitioning from active duty, like they're getting ready to retire, ETS. If your DD-214 is not created yet, your command should be able to provide you a memorandum with the dates of your ETS or retirement date. And we can use that where that makes it where you can actually start the next day. So say you retire on July 30th, you could start on July 31st with the government. There doesn't have to be a gap in service there. Work experience outside of federal or military, I like to emphasize, just add all that applies. So if you were a Starbucks barista and you're applying for an HR specialist position, probably doesn't apply. However, if you were a Starbucks supervisor and you're applying for a supervisor position, you would want to add that experience because it directly applies to the position that you are applying for. Education, military is great for education, so add all of your education, including degrees, certificates, and trainings. Demographics, not required, but of course, you're welcome to add that as well. Languages, add all languages that you speak, read, and write. And then, of course, organizations that you affiliate yourself with, like nonprofits, churches, or schools. And then references, lots of references. At least 2 references, professional, are required for employment now. This was a new law that was just passed with OPM. We must call and make contact with 2 professional references before we can hire any employee within the government at this time. If you can add 3 to 5, it makes it a little bit easier because sometimes we don't always get a hold of the first one that the applicant provides. Next slide, please. So USA Jobs is great. I know that sometimes it can be a little hard to navigate. However, I love that it allows you to create your resumes and save up to 5 resumes on USA Jobs. You're like, why would I want 5 different resumes? Well, if you're applying for different kinds of positions, like you'll want to work possibly in legal, in HR, in finance, you can create a resume specific to whatever job it is that you are applying for, and then you can save up to 5 within your USA Jobs profile. You can also save up to 10 documents. Documents would be D214, SF50, your degrees, transcripts, certifications, anything like that that supports what you put in your profile or what you have on your resume, it's so much easier to have it all saved in USA Jobs. So when that save search sends you an email and you go on and you apply for that position, it's just a quick apply, submit, and you have all your documents already uploaded and ready to go. Next slide, please. So with USA Jobs, they actually expanded this portion here recently, and they allow you to add in your travel not requirements, sorry, travel requests. So like if you're willing to travel up to 50% or 25% or 100%, if you're willing to relocate to a different position or to a different state for a different position, type of appointment, like permanent, temporary, your work schedule preferences, telework, remote. What I would do is just select all that you are willing to accept. Because what happens is when you use the USA Jobs resume builder, it pulls all the data that you put into your profile and it puts it into a nice organized format on the top section of your resume. That resume gets sent with your application over to someone like myself, the hiring manager, or HR, and we can look at, okay, this person's willing to relocate, this person wants telework, and we can categorize that based off of the preferences that the applicant selected. So really take your time and select all that you're willing to apply for with that position. Next slide, please. So let me pause here for a moment and share something personal with you all. In 2016, I was deployed for 9 months and I applied for 75 different positions on USA Jobs. Out of those 75 applications, I received 3 interviews and 2 job offers. And that was over a 9-month period of time. I was able to redeploy, come back from my deployment and walk into my first federal position as a GS7 HR assistant. In less than 5 years, I went from a GS7 to a GS13. I share that because don't give up. I know it can feel like, oh my goodness, I'm just applying like crazy. I'm getting the referred emails. I was referred to the hiring manager, but then no one contacted me. I did what Chris said. I emailed them and said I want to be considered for a non-competitive hire, and no one got back to me. Technically they're supposed to, but no one got back to me, right? And it can feel discouraging, and I've been there, but don't give up. If this is what you want, if this is part of your reason, your purpose for your career, it's one of those moments where let that fuel you and don't give up, keep applying and keep persisting that career path that you want. So going back to this, what you see here on the screen, USA Jobs has amazing search functions. And once you put in all your filters, you can save it, and that's how you select your save search that you can set up notifications for. So across the top here, keywords can include position title you are looking for, the location, city, or state. If you're like, hey, I want to be in the state of California, but you don't really care about the city, just add California. And then notice the flag at the top of the page where you can select save this search, or if the search is already saved, you can select edit this search if you want to add in some more changes. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see all of your filters, and you can narrow it down to exactly what you're looking for, the job series, your preferences, and then you can set up that save search to notify you daily, weekly, or monthly. And that can be through a text or, of course, through an email. Next slide, please. All right, so resume, it's my favorite part. Resume is your ticket, right? It is the first thing that we see about you. So think of it as like a little bit bigger than an elevator speech, but it is your first introduction to your possible supervisor. So you really want to make sure that you take your time when building your resume, which is why I strongly encourage y'all to use the USA Jobs Resume Builder. It's right there, easy to use, and it pulls all the information that you took your time putting into your USA Jobs profile. It pulls all of it and auto-populates it into a resume. However, of course, you'll have to read through and make sure it's all good to go. And you'll be able to edit and add more to things like your work experience when you're in that USA Jobs Resume Builder. Next slide, please. So first, it's really important to know the difference between federal and civilian. And I literally attended a TAP on this past Monday at Travis Air Force Base. And I heard them say to the service members that were separating, hey, just do a one-pager resume. Yes, for places like maybe Facebook or San Francisco Giants or Google, sometimes they have told me they just want a one-pager when I've been writing a resume for a veteran. However, for the government, honestly, anything 5 pages or more is what you should be considering for your resume. We want all the facts. Now we want all the relevant facts, but we want all the facts. You click next, please, Melissa. So looking at the difference here, federal resume, contact information, 10 years of relevant work experience, military and civilian experience, education, affiliations, organizations, volunteer work, and of course, references. Next. Looking at the difference with civilian resume is contact information, 5 years or less of relevant work experience. They want really recent. Civilian focus, no military lingo at all. And then of course, only primary degrees, whereas the government wants all your certificates, all your trainings. The civilian sector only wants the primary degrees, and then of course, references. Next slide, please. So when you are applying for a federal position on USA Jobs, I just want to share a little bit tidbit from an HR perspective. Most of the time, for most agencies, your resume is going to go through a computer system. And that computer system looks for keywords. That was how Department of Interior operated. Their computer system looked for keywords, and some resumes would not make it through that system. With the VA, we are a little bit better about actually having a person look through each resume. But again, we may be like, we're only going to use this cert. We're not going to use all the certs for that position, right? So it's important to select all those hiring paths that apply to you, veteran, military spouse, have your name on as many certs as possible, and then really take the time to put in all the relevant information into your resume. And then of course you can email myself or someone from my team, we'll review it for you. Or if you have someone who already works in the government, have them just a second pair of eyes, never hurts. Next slide, please. So we'll start with contact information. A few things that I like to emphasize is, if you want to add Mr. or Miss, like, Miss Engel, that's totally fine. What I encourage you not to do is add your military rank. Oftentimes we see across the resume as the summary for the resume, across the top is Sergeant First Class blank is, looking for this type of a position. True story, actually, one of my HR specialists brought me a resume and she was like, hey, Chris, I think it has a typo on it. It says SFC. And I chuckled and I was like, I know what that means, but she has no military experience or background. So she actually wasn't sure. She thought it was a typo. So keep it where it's more of civilian focused and the language. We want to know what you did in the military, but look for ways to translate that. So somebody with what I like to call Hollywood military experience. So maybe they've only seen Top Gun, really cool movie, by the way, but maybe that's their only military exposure, right? And they wouldn't be able to read through like a rank or a position title or anything like that. So you'll want to translate that to be more civilian focused. Of course, you'll want to add a physical address to your resume. You can use a PO box, totally fine. Your phone number, voicemail, please have it professional. And then of course your email, of course, make sure that's professional as well. And then what I like to also emphasize is if you've applied for lots of positions through your saved search, make sure you are keeping track of the positions you are applying for. Keep track of the positions you are applying for. If you're someone like myself, create an Excel, put all the positions you applied for and why, because when we call you, we may ask you some questions like, hey, I'm Chris, calling with VBA out of Oakland. You applied for an HR specialist position. Sometimes the response we'll get is, who is this? The VA? What, did I? That's okay. A lot of us are looking for, a lot of different opportunities, right? But just have a little bit of a cheat sheet on the positions you applied for and why you applied for that position. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so this is a lot of information. So thankfully this is being recorded, but if you're a note taker, you may want to take some notes as well. So work experience, go back 10 years if possible. If you are a military spouse and you're like, oh, Chris, I haven't worked, I've just followed my spouse around. Yes, you have worked because you volunteered at the MWR, volunteered at your kid's school, hosted a yellow ribbon event, hosted some mommy and me classes, all of that, regardless if it's paid or non-paid, can count as work experience as long as you annotate in there how it's relevant to the position you are applying for. Customer service, administrative, those are things you want to capture in your resume as it's relevant to that position. To make it count, if it's unpaid or paid, you want to add in the hours worked. So oftentimes we'll see volunteer experience, especially common for those who are younger, coming out of high school or college, or military spouses. And if it doesn't say the amount of hours worked, we cannot count that experience as work experience. So it doesn't matter if it's paid or non-paid, you'll just want to say how many hours it was that you worked in that volunteer role. Do not use bullet format. We want to see paragraph format when you're describing your job description and your duties. There's a little bit of a difference from one office to the next. I know from my local office, we prefer the paragraph format, and we're looking for the details. We're looking for how did you quantify that experience? How did you enter into a position and make it, what did you do? What was the change you implemented? And how did you leave it better than how you found it? Of course, write for the position. Now, don't go to the job announcement and copy and paste into your resume. We've seen that too, the duty descriptions, but actually read the job announcement and then look back at the positions that you've held and look at, okay, how have I done this exactly as it's stated in the job announcement, and then write it for how you did it and how it's relevant to that specific position that you're applying for. Of course, you'll want to add in the hours worked, and then annual salary. I like to encourage applicants to add it, and here's why. If you were, you started as an E1 and then you got out as an E7, of course, not every HR specialist or hiring manager is going to understand the rank that you may have attached to that specific position. But if you add the annual salary, of course, they're going to see the growth and they're going to see the progression. So that shows them that, oh, they promoted and they promoted and they promoted, and that shows your career growth, which is great to annotate on your resume. Next slide, please. So I have to share this because this was actually from a good friend of mine with the Cal Guard, and I share this at all my trainings with his permission, of course. Click next, please. But it still makes me chuckle every single time. And I love this guy a lot. And when he sent me his resume, this is exactly how it read. Retired Sergeant Major, United States Army veteran with over 20 years of experience, proficient at maintaining soldier records, improved passing APFT for over 20 soldiers, fostered an environment that promoted soldier growth and development, always maintained unit readiness for missions and mobilization, improved physical fitness standards of the unit by 90%. As prior Army, as someone who worked in HR in the Army, I know exactly what he's talking about. But I can tell you this right now, when I showed this to my HR specialist who has that Hollywood military experience, which means all she's ever known about the military is through what she's seen through Hollywood, she had no idea what he was talking about. Her first question was, what's an APFT, right? Next, please. This is an example of how you could translate it. Not saying it's how you would translate it, but just an example. Professional operations manager with over 20 years of experience, proficient in maintaining employee records containing sensitive information, fostered an environment that promoted employee growth and development, maintained department readiness in order to complete projects and reach the objective of the company, held employees to company standards and policies by leading by example and improving employee morale and well-being, improved department physical fitness requirements for employees by implementing a physical fitness workout plan that resulted in improving the test results by 90%. Anyone can read that and understand what it was that that individual did, how they walked into that leadership position, what the experience was, and how they left it better than how they found it, and they quantified it as well. Next slide, please. Sets you apart. You are what sets you apart. Being a veteran is part of who you are, but you are what sets you apart. So as you go through the resume and as you drinking a cup of coffee or having a glass of wine or however you do it, right? Take your time and make sure that you add in all of that relevant experience. Because remember, you have something to offer. Any position, you as a person, you have something to offer. And remember that. All right, so knowledge, education is power, all of it. We want to see all of it. So degrees, certifications, trainings, tests. If you're a certified trainer, if you have any kind of degrees, of course, you want to add those. But the military is famous for sending us to all kinds of training. And I'm sure the education centers also offer trainings to military spouses. So like food handlers card or mail handlers card, add all of it, especially if it's relevant to the position you are applying for. But with education, the more you add, it actually shows that you care about your own personal growth, right? And that could be taken into consideration when considering you for a position. Next slide, please. So affiliations, again, affiliations can be anything from a nonprofit, church, school, library, childcare, military branches. And I emphasize this because on my first duty station, my first sergeant actually allowed me to volunteer at my son's preschool every Friday during my lunch break. And I never really thought much about it, except for I was really happy to go see my son. However, looking back, I'm like, oh, that was great experience. It showed not just volunteer experience that I could count as work. That's one part, but it also showed that I cared about my community, that I cared to support the community and get involved. And adding those can set you apart from other applicants. We don't see it a lot, but whenever I do see it, that someone's a part of some nonprofit, I'm like, oh, wow, that person must be really involved in their community and they must care. Next slide, please. So volunteer work, this is very, of course, specific to young service members and then military spouses. I get it. My oldest son is 15, hard to believe. And he has lived in 9 different states and been in 10 different schools, right? And just recently I was helping him write his first resume and I was like, hey, go back to when we were at this duty location and you volunteered here, or when you ran a lemonade stand, or when you got CPR certified and then you started babysitting on our street in Fort Drum or whatever, right? And really quantifying and digging back into your experience at each of your locations, spouse, young service member. Were you a battle buddy? Were you the one that knew new soldiers incoming or new service members incoming to that installation? Were you the one that the first sergeant called on to escort them around? That counts, right? So add it, quantify it, and then it also shows that you care to give back and be supportive of your community. A lot of what we're looking for, it's a little bit of a foot stomper right now. We're looking for more than just the individual who can do the job. Of course, we all have a lot to offer in different ways, but how can you work independently? How can you be part of a team? And how can you really give back to that agency in carrying out our mission? And this, showing things like this, will elevate you and set you ahead of your peers on that applicant list. Next slide, please. So references, I say at least add 3, all professional. And then, it's another fun one, inform your references that they may get a phone call. It's really funny to me. Maybe I shouldn't laugh, but it is kind of funny because, you know, I was an NCO, I get it. I'll call up a reference and it'll be, you know, a Vietnam vet or World War II vet. I'm like, who? Joey? Oh, I haven't talked to that guy in like 20 years. What's he doing nowadays? So if you're going to use somebody as a reference, definitely call them and let them know that, hey, I'm applying for this job with Oakland. They might be calling you. I just did my first round of interviews. I'm super excited. You know, just so you know a little bit about what I'm doing. If you haven't spoken to them in 20 years, but you want to use them as a reference, absolutely go for it. But just make sure that they know that we'll be calling them so they can speak to your character, your work ethic, and also advise us if you'd be a good fit for that position. Those are some of the questions that we're going to be asking them when we call. Next slide, please. So going back to what I just shared about what we're looking for nowadays, with our interviews, and I just did like 6 different interviews this week, we're really looking for a level of EI, a level of emotional intelligence for new hires. So yes, can they do the job? And will they be a good fit for this position? So these are a couple of things we look for, especially because a lot of our interviews are done over Teams. So it's a little harder to see through a video screen like this one. Will that person be a good fit for this position? Will they get along with the coworkers? Will they fit into our team and carry out our mission? So things we ask are, tell me about your experience. Where did you grow? What did you learn? How did you leave the situation better than you found it? And I even give extra points, if you will, to those who share a bad experience. Like, hey, Chris, this one time it was actually a pretty bad experience. I messed up. I ended up yelling at someone. I had to get reprimanded by my first sergeant. And then the next day I was able to come in with a fresh set of eyes. I learned from it. I grew from it. So don't be afraid to share something that could be perceived as negative. Negative situations aren't always bad. They help us grow. And then, of course, tell me about a time you had a conflict with someone on your team. Again, what did you do? What did you learn? How did you leave the situation better? We want to know more about you as a person and how you would handle situations like that. We may even add in, how would you handle a conflict virtually as well? Tell me about a time you didn't agree with a task or order. What did you do? And then what was the outcome? That happens, whether you work for private sector, definitely happens in the military, work for the military, work for the government. Your boss might tell you to do something that you may not really agree with or not fully understand. How would you handle a situation like that? Don't be afraid to be honest. We want transparency and we want someone to be authentic when they're answering these kinds of questions. And then, of course, one question that is asked in all of our interviews locally for our office is, describe emotional intelligence. Describe what that means to you and how you implement that in your day-to-day operations. We've had people say, I've never heard of that. And let me Google it really quick. And that's okay. If that's the case, again, transparency. A few reminders, send a thank you note. If your interview is virtual, be prepared to be on camera, be in a suit. If you're wearing, workout shorts, flip-flops, and a suit coat, great, awesome. That's all we're all going to see from here up, but just be ready to rock and roll on a camera. Wear solid colors. If you wear a lot of busy print on a video interview, it can be really distracting. So solid colors are better. If it's in person, no smoking or intense perfumes. Nowadays, we're seeing a lot of allergies. So if you come in, it could actually be disruptive and disturbing to those who are conducting the interview, if they have like an allergy or something like that. And then take a moment. This is your time. This is your time to interview them as much as it is their time to interview you. Relate to them, connect with them, find some common ground, ask clarifying questions, ask questions, just to make sure that it's a job that you also want as much as they want to consider you for that position. And then, of course, take time to respond. It's okay to have like a pause, right? And just making sure that you fully understand their question, they hear your response, and they know your response is just not scripted, right? It's actually authentic and how you truly feel about the answer to that question. Next slide, please. So if you hear nothing today, I want you to leave at least with this, right? This is part of my passion. This is something I take very seriously, is supporting veterans and military spouses with their transition from military to lifestyle and environment to whatever it is next for them. And the military is simply part of your story, part of your life, not all of it. Great tools, great resources, great training, great experiences, but it's part of it. You are what matters. So what it is that you want for your career, that is what will fuel you as you take that next step and just watch those opportunities open up for you. And of course, don't give up. Don't give up at all. Next slide, please. So of course, I am on LinkedIn as well, and I will hopefully coordinate with Melissa to have my contact information sent out. I encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, email my VA email. I love it. Don't worry that it's going to be a bother. It is not. I will support you in helping you with your resume, helping you with USA jobs. Of course, if you want to work for the VA, I would love to talk to you about that as well. We have tons of positions and tons of opportunities. But just thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great to be here today. And it's, of course, such an honor. Back to you, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Chris. All right. So looks like we've got some questions in the chat. Are you able to see those? I'm going to stop sharing.
I did just pull those up. Let's see. What
So
if
I
you are
gotta-
older and your military set is way more than 10 years ago? Well, that's okay. Yeah, no worries at all. So the way I understand that question, let me repeat it back to you. If you were in the military a while ago, right, and you're applying for federal employment now, and you still want to speak to that experience on your resume, of course, we would want you to do that. We'd also want you to add in that DD 214 because you still would have veteran preference based off of your years of service and what you qualify for, which I can support you in adding more clarification to that. Is that kind of what you were asking, Chris? Totally. So if your military experience was more than 10 years ago, you'll still want to add that into your resume because it adds an extra hiring path available to you as a veteran, for a veteran preference, right? And as a veteran. And if you've had a gap in employment between military and something else, or you weren't working, really think about, what was I doing? Was I being a stay-at-home mom? Did I go to school? Was I volunteering? Was I at a church or a school or nonprofit or daycare? So that way you can add in some sort of work experience, so that way there is no gap. That's what I would encourage you to do. And then from Bridget, should we annotate full-time versus 40 hours? So you'll want to add in the hours, not really full or part-time. You want to add in the actual hours worked. So if you worked 20 hours, you'll put 20 hours. If you worked 40, you'll put 40, 60, same. And so should we annotate a supervisor with contact information for every position, or add them to the reference? So it's really up to you. You don't have to add in your supervisor as a contact person. What it does, it gives you the option to say, maybe contact yes or no, or contact me first. I usually encourage you to just put yes, if it's okay, unless there was an issue there that you may want to say contact me first so you can explain. And then of course, I would still add the professional references as well. I would add both. If the experience is not relevant, I wouldn't add it. But if it was in the military and it's still not relevant, which I would question that, by the way, but if it was in the military and it's still not relevant to the position you are applying for, you'd still want to add it. And then really think about how you can make it relevant. Any other questions or clarifying on those?
Well, looks like that's it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Chris, for a very informative presentation. Oh, you got one more from Bridget in the chat.
So she says, I've seen resumes in paragraph form that take the keywords needed for a job. Should we annotate it that way? I would put your resume in paragraph form. Some agencies are okay with the bullet. I know for our office, we do prefer the paragraph format. And then of course, adding in those keywords that relates to the experience you have and is also in the job description that you're applying for. Okay, captured that. Any other questions?
Well, again, thank you so much, Chris. Very informative. And once we get this uploaded to YouTube, we'll make sure we get you all the link as well as Chris's contact information. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.